Okay, so the 401k. For millions of us, it's the cornerstone of retirement planning, right? It's just what you do. But what if that advice isn't as solid as it seems? What if there's a crack in that foundation? That's exactly what our source material today is asking us to take a much closer look at. All right, let's just dive right in. Is your 401k really building your wealth, or is it kind of building someone else's? We're about to dig into some really compelling arguments from our source material that, honestly, might just challenge everything you thought you knew about this retirement go-to. Now, before we get into the criticism, we have to understand why the 401k is so popular in the first place. I mean, it became this absolute giant for a reason, and that reason is a simple but really powerful promise. And this is it, the big selling point. The deal sounds pretty much perfect, doesn't it? You save money before taxes are taken out, which lowers your taxable income right now. Then, all that money gets to grow without getting hit by taxes every year. You only pay up when you retire. And the idea is that by then, you'll be in a much lower tax bracket. Simple. But here's where the critics, the ones cited in our source, say, hold on a second. They argue that this perfect promise comes with some serious, often hidden downsides. And this isn't a new idea. I mean, look at this quote from Time magazine all the way back in 2009. They called it a financial flop. And the first big problem they point to? It all starts with the fees you're paying just to be in the game. Okay, so this leads to a really interesting way of looking at it from our source material. They say we need to stop thinking of our 401k as just our money. Instead, we should see it as a business partnership, a really complicated one where, well, the terms might not exactly be in our favor. So let's talk about the costs you can actually see. According to Forbes, the average annual fee on a 401k is about 0.81%. Now, I know what you're thinking. That doesn't sound like a lot, right? Less than 1%? But when you stretch that out over 20, 30, 40 years of saving and compounding, that tiny fee can eat away a massive chunk of your money. And that's just the fee they tell you about. We haven't even touched on the hidden ones yet. But here's the really crazy part. What is that fee actually charged on? This is where our source material just drops a bombshell, highlighted by this quote from Forbes. The fees aren't just being charged on your slice of the pie. No, they're calculated on the entire balance. That includes the big chunk, 25, maybe 30% or more, that was never yours to begin with. It's money you're going to have to pay the government in taxes. And this slide just lays out those partnership terms perfectly. Look at this. On one side, there's you. You're doing all the work, you're putting in all the money, and you're taking on 100% of the risk if the market tanks. And on the other side, that's your partner. They take a guaranteed slice of the profits, they can change the rules on you at any time, and they'll slap you with a penalty if you need to get to your own money ahead of schedule. Let's break down your partner's rules a bit more. First off, they lock up your money. You can't touch it before you're 59 and a half without getting hit with a big penalty. But then, get this, once you hit 72, they force you to start taking it out, even if you don't need it yet. And if you don't, they hit you with an insane 50% penalty. And the whole time, they reserve the right to change their cut, the tax rate, whenever they feel like it. The source even points out that the government builds its national budget around counting on this money coming in. So you might be thinking, okay, but it's still worth it because of the tax break, right? Well, the whole justification for this pretty lopsided deal hangs on that one single promise, that you'll pay less in taxes later. But what if that's just not true? What if that whole assumption is just wrong? Yeah, as this quote from US Bank says, it's not always true. In fact, the source material argues something pretty counterintuitive. If you do a great job saving, if you actually build up a really big nest egg, there's a very real chance you could end up in the same tax bracket or maybe even a higher one when you retire. So how on earth is that possible? How could your taxes go up when your income is going down? Well, it all comes down to one word: deductions. Think about it. When you're working, you have all these tax breaks, but in retirement, the kids are grown, so no more dependent deductions, your mortgage is probably paid off, and you're not making those 401k contributions anymore, which used to lower your taxable income. All those deductions just vanish. And then there's the big one, the elephant in the room, the U.S. national debt. Our source points out that it has absolutely exploded. So with the government needing more and more money, you have to ask yourself a very simple but very important question. In the future, do you really think tax rates are going to go down or up?
And believe it or not, the problems might not even end with you. According to Bankrate.com, which is cited in our source, the 401k can turn into a total nightmare for the people you leave it to, like your kids or other family members.
So, what causes this nightmare? It's a little thing called the 10-year payout rule, and it totally changed the game for inheriting these accounts. Basically, it forces your heirs to take all the money out of the account and pay all the taxes on it within just 10 years after you're gone. You can probably see the trap this sets for your kids. They inherit this nice nest egg you built for them, but then they're forced to cash it all out in a really short time frame. And every single dollar they withdraw is taxed as regular income at their tax rate. This usually happens when they're in their own highest earning years, which can just rocket them into a way higher tax bracket. So, what can they do about it? Well, the source breaks down their quote-unquote choices, and it's not much of a choice. They can take it all at once and get slammed with a monster tax bill in 1 year, or they can try to spread it out, but they still have to empty the account in 10 years. And what's the choice they don't really talk about? If they screw up and miss the deadline, they face that unbelievable 50% penalty. Okay, so when you step back and look at all these arguments from the source material, that conventional wisdom about the 401k being the best thing since sliced bread, it starts to look a little different, doesn't it? Really, the whole critique comes down to these three big things. 1, you're paying fees on money that was never truly yours to begin with. 2, that core promise of being in a lower tax bracket later on is, well, a huge gamble. And 3, the way it's set up can create a massive tax bomb for the people you love. And that brings us to the final, really provocative question our source material leaves us with. When you look at all the rules, all the penalties, and the government's guaranteed cut, you really have to wonder, who is the real client in a 401k plan? Is it you, or is it your silent and very, very powerful business partner?